I was an atheist. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion whatsoever. That very first Kundalini Yoga class is where I heard Waheguru Mantra for the first time, and the second class a week later, Moon Mantra. That shifted everything for me. Within a short amount of time, I stopped drinking, I stopped doing drugs, I stopped smoking, I went vegetarian. Those were big changes for someone like me. My first time going into a Gurudwara Sahib was in a Siddhartha Mantra Sahib.
Wow.
I'd never been to a Gurudwara Sahib. I'd never seen a Sikh up until this point. I walked down the steps and I put my head on the parikrama and I cried for 2 days and 2 nights. I couldn't stop crying. It felt like someone had given me some pani to drink and I didn't even know how thirsty I was. It's like my skin didn't exist anymore and I just melted into something, but I had a whole lot of questions. There was an old Uncle T that came up to me. He was saying that it was written on my forehead that I was a Sikh of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Talk about freaking someone out. For me, it never felt like I've chosen Sikhi or I've even found Sikhi. I wasn't looking for anything. Maharaj just grabbed me by the scruff of my neck. When I went to visit my parents with a turban, they thought I'd become an extremist Muslim. And they was like, you're not welcome like this. So either take that thing off your head, they said, or you're not welcome. I was like, okay, then we go back home. My friends thought I'd joined a cult. There was an intervention at work because no one knows who Sikhs are, what Sikhi is, but it was so alien for them. I was at the top of my field. I led a network of 600 people who were much, much older than me, of professors that I was at the head of, and I walked away from the whole thing. You're walking away from a really good job that people would do anything for. You're walking away from a comfortable country, which is true. It was much easier in Belgium. You're walking away from the life you've built, all your friends. Why? For anyone committed to Sikhi, there's been a whole lot of things that you have to do that you don't like. As you're working through things, it's hard work. You have to face so much that if you'd be choosing the things you'd like, you'd have walked away a million times. Realizing I can't do it without Guru Sahib, I stand no chance. And I come in utter despair and humility of, I stand no chance doing this without you. So just tell me what to do and I'll do it. What happened with my family relationship? They officially fully disowned me. I'm completely not their daughter anymore. Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj became all those relationships with me. That was so much kirpa. I didn't have a relationship with a mother, with a father, with any siblings, with any grandparents. Maharaj became all of those relationships. That's where you're starting to build personal relationships with Guru Sahib, and that's where that love takes on all those forms.
Welcome back to the BOS TV podcast series. We're very blessed today because we are starting a new project, and that is Finding Sikhi. And before we introduce our guest today, I want to just introduce who's going to be hosting this podcast with me first, and that is by Ankupreet Singh Ji. This is actually your idea, bro, when it comes to starting this off. I think it was back in 2024, because we're in 2025 now. And we was at Boss Sikhi camp, and we were standing somewhere, and you spoke about this idea, right, about finding Sikhi. So what is this all about, bro?
Yeah, so it's essentially is what it says. It is finding Sikhi. The idea is to look at people's journeys on how they became Sikh. The assumption is, and a lot of us, I know Sukhdeep Singh, myself, and so many others, people look at us and think, oh, these guys were born with the Kirpans coming out of them or something. There's that assumption that a lot of people have just born into Sikh families, Amritdhari families, and the kids are naturally Amritdharis. But the reality is that so many of us have found Sikhi through weird and wonderful ways after some crazy experiences, and we all found Sikhi, and it's really changed us in profound ways, changed who we are, our identity, the way we look, the way we act, the way we respond to situations. And what we want to do is just highlight these experiences, because there's so many of the people who feel like Sikhi is so far from them. But the reality is it isn't, because we've all started in that same way. So we want to use this opportunity to kind of look at, discuss, analyze people's journeys into Sikhi, how they found Sikhi, and how that's made a important positive impact in their life and changed their life for the better. Obviously, if it's ruined your life, then we won't interview you, but we won't find anyone like that anyway. But the idea is that it's making and changing lives. And for me, and the things will say this as well, Sikhi saves lives, it saves families, all the drugs, nashe, alcohol, everything that's ingrained in the Punjabi community, in all communities, but let's just talk about the community which we know best, which is the Punjabi community. In order to eradicate this, we need to motivate each other, inspire each other, and support each other to all go towards the Guru and find Sikhi and find ourselves, our true selves. And by doing that, we'll change our lives, but also, most importantly, importantly, our families will benefit. You know, if one person finds Sikhi in a household, the whole household, the whole tabbar, the whole generation should feel that impact of how it's made a positive impact on just one person, and then that impact just explodes throughout the whole family. And that's what we want to do. And that's what my intention is when I first spoke to the Basics team. And obviously I'm very grateful for the Sengs and the whole team to, you know, agree and come on board. I'm grateful for all the opinions I sought beforehand. All those people who advised me saying, you know, this is what's needed to try and tackle some of the community issues, this breath of positivity and a fresh look at people's journeys into Sikhi. And as you said, thank you to Benji for joining us and being the first person to share her story. I met Benji 10 odd years ago in a camp. I'm literally camping. And, you know, I think my wife's been traumatized from it. She's never stepped in a tent again. But it was a bit of a crazy camp. I'm sure you remember that, Benji, as well. How was the camp for you first?
I really liked it. I really liked the camp.
Yeah.
But I like camping. So
What is this camp you're talking about? You're talking about camp and camping.
it was a Malaysian camp. It was in Sri
yeah.
Lanka Academy, and it was in Scotland. They've been doing it since every year.
Yeah, it's in the
Different islands in
Yeah,
Scotland.
Island Bull. And you say, you know, mosquitoes in Punjab. There are some, what are they called? No, some midges.
I've seen them. They're
Boy,
big.
in Martha, they killed us. They destroyed us. They're just everywhere biting us. And it was all like intense. So it was literally intense camping. It's a very good camp, and the Singhs and the Guru Granth Sahib Ji Academy say with us tried their very best and made this very positive camp. But it was, you know, like communal showers.
We didn't have communal showers.
So the worst of the vlogs, and I would wake up really early to go to, like, you know, a different shower because I just found it really weird having a communal open showers. I was like, I'm not that type of person.
I think most of us.
Not saying that as a camp are.
For a lot of people, it was the first time camping, I think.
Yeah.
And I think a good few people ended up sleeping like in the langar hole because it was too wet or too cold in the tent.
I think my father was a kid with this. He slept in his car. He couldn't get a hotel with them. Now get his car. Good digits on gear. But we've done camping before, and I don't mind. I enjoyed it. But I think that was just cold, wet, and you know, it was just windy, and it was just a bit, at times miserable. They did a great job, by the way. But yeah. So that was
was the first time.
how was that? 10 years ago, Benji, I think.
Yeah, that must have been because I got married September of that same year.
Oh,
Sorry, November of that same year. We got married.
2015. I want to say, or 14.
Yes, 2015.
Yeah, that makes
Sorry,
sense.
I'm looking because
yeah.
my husband is sitting
My
there.
wife would kill me if I forgot my wedding day. And I did actually. She told me.
We have both forgotten, even on a phone call with like the government about something like marriage allowance, and they asked us, "What's your wedding date?" And neither of us knew. It's like, let me get the paperwork out. So we're good.
And if Bardi is there, it would be great if Bardi joined us, but we respect her. Bardi wants to stay on the other side of the camera. So Benji, tell us about yourself. So who are you?
Who am I? My group. Japjit Kaur, living in Leicester. Have been there almost since I got to England, which is the end of 2011. I moved to England. I spent 6 months in Coventry, and then I moved to Leicester. I'm originally from Belgium, and I moved to the UK because of Sikhi. As in Belgium, it wasn't very straightforward being a Sikh and living there for various reasons.
Coventry?
Yeah, exactly. That's
not
why it was
London.
only 6 months.
Yeah.
Exactly that reason.
No offense to anyone from Coventry. I'm very patriotic about where I'm from in that sense. And I don't miss an opportunity to tell everyone where I'm from.
Slough.
From Slough. It's a beautiful part of the country.
I did like Southall. I lived here for about a month or 6 weeks, and was like, no, I can't do this. So that was a trial out. I was like, no, I'll let me head up a bit up north.
I appreciate that. Southall is a difficult place to survive
that was
for
it.
anyone. The bugs struggle here sometimes.
This podcast is brought to you from Southall as well.
But so what was your life like before kind of joining Sikhi or coming across the Sikh community? What were you doing before, and where were you?
I was in Belgium. I was at the point where I came into Sikhi, I was working at university. I'd done my PhD. I was doing a postdoctoral degree at Leuven University, and I was living let's say, a pretty standard Western life. at that point, no spirituality in my life as I was coming into Sikhi. There was, as in I was really religious, let's say Catholic, when I was a kid growing up, but not at the point where I found Sikhi, or where Guru Sahib pulled me. Completely on the contrary, very much a workaholic, using drugs, drinking, smoking. Yeah, and that wasn't even weird amongst my colleagues. I was from the literature department.
Yeah.
It wasn't weird to be doing drugs if you worked at the literature department.
And you mentioned about being from a Catholic family as well. You used to go to the church as well. I remember you saying in a previous podcast that you still had that connection to
Yeah.
something more
So
than...
I grew up, my grandparents on both sides were pretty Catholic.
Yeah.
My parents not. They had actually, I don't know how you would phrase it in English, but signed themselves out of the register, basically. So very much not practicing. But we grew up in a very small village. And to kind of keep the peace in the village, there were two schools. There was a Catholic school and there was a state school. And this is quite common in Belgium because you'd have the two systems operating parallelly. I have no idea if it works like this here.
We have Church of England schools, Catholic schools, and
and
state
it's-
schools. It's a similar idea.
And so the Catholic school was typically a girls' school, as in there were very few boys. I think the year where I was in, that was the first 2 boys entering that school. So I was sent there, and then my brother was sent to the state school, which was traditionally the boys' school. And so that kept the peace in the village with everyone. One kid in one school, one kid in the other. Everyone is happy. And I guess it's just because the Catholic school happened to be a girls' school that I ended up there. It wasn't from anything other reason for that. But I very much remember when I was growing up, the memories I have of my first years, let's say till 6, 7, I'd be talking to God in myself or out loud. I'd be singing what we now think of as praises, as is kirtan, but like not Gurbani kirtan, but just like
Hymns and stuff.
yeah, it would be really like a common thing for me. I know that I had my grandma's rosary, which was passed down to me, and I was like that kid. You might have seen it if you didn't grow up Catholic, of course, like, but seen it in the movies, like sitting with your hands folded at the side of the bed, and I'd be doing my rosary, and I'd be the only one in my family. My brother, not like that. My parents, not like that at all. But in that sense, there was a kirpa that I went to a school where religion was part of it. I went to church, also as the only one of kind of my own family, but my grandparents would take me, or I'd go up by myself, and we'd go with the school. And it was to the point that I very much remember my mom saying many times, she's going to become a nun. As in, I'd be like proper
Faithful.
committed.
Yeah.
And it was something that I considered, actually. As in, I didn't consider myself having a family. I considered myself entering a nunnery. Sounds weird talking about that now, because it feels like many lifetimes ago, like not even part of this one. And I was drawn mostly to the mystic element within Catholicism. So just as we would know, I guess as Sikhs, like the mystic element in Islam, like as Sufis, there is a mystic counterpart in Catholicism. And I was really intrigued. And it's not far off of what you could think of as Bhagats, as in it's that same longing to become one with the divine. If you'd look at those writings of those mystics who had achieved that oneness, it's very similar to reading Bhagat Bani. And so I was very intrigued, I was very pulled. And then in my early teens, in a very short space of time, a very close person in our family passed away, and a very close friend of mine passed who was the same age as me. And I started asking questions about death, and I didn't get answers that satisfied me, as in none of what was said seemed to make any sense for me. And that's where I entirely lost my faith.
Any examples of what they were saying to you that didn't sit well or made sense?
It was just a black and white as, well, they'll be gone to heaven or hell now, which just didn't resonate with me as that's what happens, or that's what happens ultimately. There was a lot of not knowing at all.
Yeah.
As in, it wasn't part of the conversation, and you'd be difficult when you'd ask. There was a lot of avoiding the question. There was a lot of, we don't speak about death. This isn't part of our lived reality. Yeah, it was very confusing. And for me, from that moment onwards, religion didn't make sense. And growing up in a small village, there weren't any other options of faiths to even enter your world. As in, it wasn't like, oh, there were a couple of Muslim families or Sikh families or like nothing at all. It was purely white and Catholic. In other European countries, you'd even within Christianity have a couple of options. It was Catholic and that's it. And so I lost my faith entirely and became very skeptical. Strangely enough, when I then went to uni, I studied literature. And one of the topics I kept going back to would be exactly the mystics, also within Dutch literature, French literature. And so I would study their writings more like from a academic perspective, but I kept being pulled and I kept finding myself in the theology library. And even though it wasn't driven from the same point, it did mean I kept coming across writings about that ecstasy of divine union. And then it was during my uni years, when I was doing my PhD, or maybe even when I was still a student, I used to get horrible migraines already from a young age. And I started going to a yoga class, a hatha yoga class. I think I was a student at uni at this point. But I was drinking, smoking, doing drugs. It wasn't doing much for me, but it was to try and help my body a bit and try and help my migraines. Then, when I was doing my PhD, or just after, it might have been in my postdoctoral years already. Yeah, postdoctoral years already. So after I finished my PhD, a yoga class was started in our department during a lunch break, and that was from someone teaching Kundalini Yoga, someone from the 3HO community. Not a Sikh herself at all, not within the whole 3HO lifestyle ultimately, but I started going to that class because my migraines were so bad that I was struggling to even finish my research. And in the first class, Waheguru Mantra was put on as a recording, I think.
Would you say that was your? And I'm fascinated by this idea you grew up with. There's no Sikhs or Muslims or other people, other religions, even denominations of Christianity around. So when was, before we kind of go about the yoga, when was the first time you saw a Sikh? Was that?
That was even after that. I've not seen a Sikh
okay.
ever in my life, because Sikhs in Belgium, especially at that time, so we're talking now about, 15 years ago or so, they were very much only in a few towns, Sint-Truiden being one of them. I'd never seen a Sikh in my life.
Wow.
Not on TV either.
Yeah.
That wasn't present.
Diversity wasn't a thing there in that
Not
sense.
at all. And like even like in my university years, I lived in a bit of a bigger city like Leuven. There were no Sikhs around at all. And you'd find the odd Muslim and that was about it. And so other people, I guess, who were consciously looking for spirituality would end up going to Buddhist communities or the Hare Krishna community, which is fairly big in Belgium, as in they have a big grounds. And so people would go to Hare Krishna events. Sikhs, you wouldn't hear of them. And it wasn't, of course, something that was kind of nurtured in my upbringing either, to look into anything, as in, yes, I went to Catholic school and I went to a Catholic secondary school as well. And it was a Catholic university, but that doesn't mean really anything at university anymore. But like, where in a good Sikh family, if you see your child being so committed and like in conversation with Waheguru, you nurture that, I would assume. And my parents just tried to like, please no.
We've left this, and you're bringing it back.
Yeah,
again,
my
like,
reason for going to secondary Catholic school wasn't that was a Catholic school. That was the best school that we could find. So that's where I ended up. And my brother ended up there as well, even though he went to, it was just about the best school, and whatever denomination was behind it wasn't really important. But so yeah, that very first Kundalini Yoga class is where I heard Waheguru Mantra for the first time. And the second class a week later, Mool Mantra.
Was that your?
Yeah, hair standing on end on my arms, because that shifted everything for me in my life, to the point that it impacted me so much that I stopped going after 6 weeks, because I was very cushy with my life as it was, and the yoga wasn't really impacting me to that extent. I just went literally to help with my migraines and my back pain, but I had Wai Guru Mantra and Guru Mantra, well, Guru Mantra and Mool Mantra going in my head all the time. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and just be reciting Mool Mantra. And it's like, I didn't know what it was. I went and Googled, and all I could find at that point was Mool Mantra from Hindu tradition. So there was absolutely no awareness about Sikhs. At that point, if you would walk around in Belgium and you'd come across a turban, that would be a Muslim thing. It wasn't even associated with Sikhi. If you open up a dictionary in Belgium, I haven't done so in the past 10 years, but look up turban in Dutch, and it'll say headgear for Muslims. So there's no awareness of Sikhs whatsoever.
So your first interaction wasn't even
It wasn't an interaction with
individual
Sikhs.
or book. It was literally just by hearing.
It was just
Vaheguru.
yeah.
It kind of, Sunia Dug Baba, Sunia Hard Vesagal, the thing that's so far from us, just by listening, impacts and changes us. And that's fascinating. So just by hearing Vaheguru the first time in that lesson, then Mool Mantra the following week.
And it was, I think those yoga classes, like people who know me know that I'm quite far away from the 3HO community. If you want to insult me, ask me if I'm a 3HO Sikh, which I got a lot at the initial Sikh camps here in the UK after I've moved.
So you're not part of it.
Well,
Just
but because part of their sadhana is to read Japji Sahib in the morning, I got introduced to reading Japji Sahib or listening to Japji Sahib. And so this was shifting things at such a rapid extent. But mind, I was a atheist.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have anything. This was such an internal struggle. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion whatsoever. And yet there was this pull, and it was very uncomfortable. And I could feel that things were shifting. Within a short amount of time, I stopped drinking. I stopped doing drugs. I stopped smoking. I went vegetarian. Those were big changes for someone like me.
Was there ever a moment where you tried fighting against these
Oh
changes?
yeah, that's
Like,
what me not going after the first 6 weeks. Like, I don't like any of this. What's happening? And then I think a month later or something, I turned back to that class. Obviously, I had no other place to turn to either, right? That class was the only kind of portal. I'm back to that class, and then I started asking questions, but she barely knew anything herself as a teacher. I was like, okay, so I'm going to have to go to India. So I booked tickets nearly a year in advance to go to India on a trip, on a holiday. And I ended up going to Punjab. I landed in Delhi, took a train straight to Amritsar Sahib.
You saw a second then, right?
Yeah.
You definitely.
My first time going into a Gurudwara Sahib was in Sri Harmandir Sahib.
Wow.
I'd never been to a Gurudwara Sahib. I'd never really seen a Sikh. I'd never seen a Sikh up until this point, until I arrived in Punjab. That was my absolute first introduction.
So it's from listening to Vaheguru, the literal word Vaheguru, Mool Mantra, then you went on this journey of learning internet research, doing Japji Sahib in the morning, having never actually met another. And it's just think of all those people out there just like finding Sikhi, literally in all these weird.
I didn't know what I was finding.
Not even looking, like you found not even trying to look.
I was definitely the person who was not looking.
Yeah.
I was really skeptical. I was really, really skeptical. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion.
It's interesting, because that point about the first thing that you heard was Vaheguru Mantra. It kind of reminds you of like our first Guru Sahiban, that they were like Guru Angad Dev Ji, Palena Ji, they first had the Shabad.
Yeah.
Or Guru Amar Das Ji, they first had the Shabad. And it's just interesting in that respect that your first interaction was with the Shabad involved in individuals, if you know what I mean, coming into Sikhi. So I thought that was quite unique and quite interesting as well. Think about it.
And the trajectory of when you try fighting it, and like, I don't want to go down this path, but you still end up, there's no way of fighting if it's in your karam, if it's in your desk, there's no way of fighting back against it.
Yeah, because I didn't go to Harmandir Sahib with the idea of I'm going to become a Sikh. And I just wanted to understand a bit more and travel and go to India for the first time. There you go. But I arrived there on the eve of Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Gurupurab.
Wow.
Talk about having good karam. And so my first time coming to a Gurudwara Sahib was in Amritsar Sahib in Harmandir Sahib. That was profound, and we ended up staying for a week because this was also how the dates fell right then was that the next day, the day after Gurupurab, if I've got the dates exactly correct, everything shut down because it was the commemoration also of the November genocides. So we were stuck for a week. I didn't mind being stuck for a week, but a lot happened on that trip. mind, I was getting a little bit okay with the God idea, but maybe I should say, like, up until this point, if in the yoga classes I was still going to, if the word God was said, I was very uncomfortable with that. I wasn't going to a yoga class for God.
Yeah.
I was going for my back and for my migraine. So keep that stuff away from me. I've been there and I've walked away from that. There's no answers there, was my thinking, right?
Yeah.
Let alone reincarnation. Like, yeah, sorry, I was a scientist. No, I was a doctor.
Doctor, PhD.
No.
Yeah.
And then what happened in Harmandir Sahib, yeah, that was so profound. I walked down the steps and I put my head on the parikrama and I cried for 2 days and 2 nights. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop crying. And it felt, I've said this in the podcast with Kamalpreet Singh as well, and I've said it in private conversations. It felt like someone had given me some pani to drink and I didn't even know how thirsty I was, like how parched I was. And I absolutely just, it's like my skin didn't exist anymore and I just melted into something, but I had a whole lot of questions at the same time. And it was very blessed and really uncomfortable and something I wanted to run away from at the same time as never leave again. There was a lot of conflict inside at that point. And yeah, it was very profound. We stayed for a week. When I walked out, and so this was in the evening, Rera Sahib was being recited and that stirred so deeply inside. But when we then left the complex, this is before all the renovations that have recently happened, so you'd still have all the shops really crowded nearby. There was an old Uncle T that came up to me and he started speaking in Punjabi. Didn't understand anything he was saying. But then his son came to translate and the son said that his father was saying that it was written on my forehead that I was a Sikh of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Talk about freaking someone out. But the Uncle Ji went into his shop and he sold books on Sikh and he found every English book that he could take from his shelves and just sold me a whole pile of books, a backpack completely full. And that was my literature for that month. And he also gave me my first kara, which was really interesting. Sorry?
For free or did he sell it to you?
I can't remember.
Punjabi
I know that the books I had to pay for the kara, I don't know if he included it in the price or not.
He bought here's the price.
But it was very interesting because, and I don't have them, I was going to bring them with me, I forgot them. But from the moment I was born, my grandfather gave a bracelet to my parents to put on me from the day I was born, which was he called it a slave bracelet. It was a silver bracelet, just pure round, just like a kara. And I've never come across anyone who had one. So it wasn't a common thing in Belgium. It wasn't a common thing for Catholics. But he gave clear instructions. It should never leave her body. She needs to keep it on at all times. And I remember he would give me a new one if I outgrew it. And I had a couple of surgeries as a kid. And there would be like where they had to cut it through then to be under general anesthetic. And there would be a new one waiting for me. So there in Amritsar Sahib, I took off that slave bracelet and put on the kara. But it was strange because I'd always had one on me, weirdly enough.
And that slave bracelet, I mean, what color is it?
It's just a silver,
Metal.
like no decoration, just round, just like a kara,
Oh, wow.
but in silver.
What does it represent?
It was seen as your handcuff to God. That's how my grandfather explained it to me. And he passed before I came into Sikhi, so I've never been able to ask him because I wanted to ask him, like, who told you this? Where did this come from?
I wonder if he had an interaction with a Sikh or
Yeah,
some
exactly.
sort of where someone told him that and he was fascinated by the
Very
concept.
strange.
I wanted to keep his grandkids on a straight line or a straight
Very
path.
strange. Because none of the other grandkids were given it, which is the other weird thing.
So
but
you're
there
the
you go.
chosen one for many people.
I'm so curious about what happened prior to him giving that. My parents don't know. As in, I've actually not asked them because we don't communicate. But they never told me anything about it other than your grandfather said you have to have it.
Well, it's interesting because with the kara, we also refer to as a hat kari as well, like being handcuffs
Yeah,
on
exactly.
translation. And it brings me to a question that I spoke to about offline, which is this is called finding Sikhi. But it seems like you didn't find the Sikhi later on in your life. It's like it was always there from the start.
In that conversation that we just had, and I've said it before, it feels like there was karam that I had to work out in ways that could only be in the family that I grew up in and in the country that I grew up in. That was just how that karam needed to play out. But as if, and this is in hindsight, of course, right? But that kara played a big role in that, as if Guru Sahib had already somehow given, like, I'm going to give you an insignia. You're already mine, but I'll come and claim you later on. Because for me, it never felt like I've chosen Sikhi, or I've even found Sikhi. It happened in such, I wasn't looking for anything. Maharaj, especially in Harmandir Sahib, they just grabbed me by the scruff of my neck. I had no choice in the matter. If it was out of choice, I don't know if I'd be sitting here. As in, I had no choice in the matter. It just unfolded in the craziest ways almost. And even that, like with the name that my parents gave me, there's a weird story around the name giving as well, but I was given the name Neela, which is very close to Neela.
Yeah.
Again, hindsight can make things strange, things of course, right? But for me, it really feels as a Maharaj kind of already like, don't worry, I'll come and collect you later on. With these things, you'll get to the point of where I'll come for you, if that makes any sense.
It's almost like we're saying finding Sikhi is about how the Guru finds people. It's almost how the Guru Sahib pulls people out from a life which is so far removed from Bhagwan, Dastara and beads and turbans and Kripana, but the way he pulls us out and then lifts us and brings us into his fold, into his embrace. So what would you say? So up to this point, when did you start thinking that I need to become a Sikh, or I need to take on the Guru and sacrifice my mind, body and soul towards Guru?
Right there and then almost, as in those first days in Harmandir Sahib, and the person I was traveling with was my best friend, and he said, "You've come home," which is really interesting because he was searching his entire life, and he was at that point searching in Buddhist traditions, and as we were traveling together, the plan was to also go to Nepal and like help him on the search, and it ended up being pretty much all about Sikhi. He's like, you don't know how blessed you are. You've not had to look. It's just, you've just been placed where you need to be. He said, don't give that up. For anything that happens now, don't give this up. And as I was then reading in the next days, and so we ended up being a week in Amritsar Sahib, then we went to, we traveled around, we ended up in the Rawalsar Sahib. So beautiful that we ended up there for a week, because not many people actually get to go there, and Guru Gobind Singh Ji themselves was there. But so I'm reading a lot, and while we're in the Rawalsar Sahib, I'm like, I want to take Amrit. I had no idea what that entailed ultimately. But I want to go to Anandpur Sahib, and I want to take Amrit. That was what I got from the books I was reading. And so we ended
Are
up...
these the books that you just got from Amritsar 5 and you've just read those?
Yeah, there was a lot of bus traveling because we were traveling in the north, like not just in Punjab, but really like go up in Himachal Pradesh. And so I'm reading loads. And so we take the toy train to Chandigarh. I find out that there is a bus going from Chandigarh to Anandpur Sahib. So I end up at the bus station.
Are you alone now, or you?
No, this is with my friend.
Okay.
We're at the bus station, where I've eaten a pilau that's put me off of ever eating pilau again. It's so spicy. And I'm sitting on that bus, not knowing what I'm about to do, and the bus doesn't go. The bus never left. That was Guru Sahib's like, whoa, this is not the pace that we're going to go at. You have no idea what you're doing at this point. But so that seed was really planted, as in that was all I wanted. And I know that there is a video of Baba Hari Singh Ji, like a snippet that's gone around that, where Baba Hari Singh has kind of misunderstood how we explained the journey, and where they said that I immediately took Amrit in Siri Takat Sahib. That isn't how it happened. Yeah. But the Icha was there. I really wanted to take Amrit, but I wanted to do it in Anandpur Sahib. Anyway, that didn't happen. I come back home after 6 weeks, and I start wearing a dastar, and I start freaking out a whole lot of people around me.
So at this point, you've kind of formally said, I want to be a Sikh. Yeah. You've, this is your path. I've been found, or found Sikhi, but you haven't taken Amrit.
I've not taken Amrit. I have no Sangat. I start practicing Sikhi. I start keeping my gaze. I start wearing a dastar. I start doing my banya. I've got no Sangat around me.
Yeah.
I start showing up at university in a dastar. Not really okay, but Maharaj covered me entirely, because in the first conversations I had with the first people, there was a misunderstanding, and they thought I had cancer, because the word sick and sick, just like in English, is very similar in Dutch. And so they misunderstood, and for a year or nearly a year. I flew under the radar.
So you said to them, "You're sick."
And they understood that I'm Zeke. And why would you cover your head if you're ill? It's
Yeah.
going to be if you have cancer.
Oh,
So, bichara.
wow.
Yeah. So Maharaj discovered for that.
You should take some time off, Benji, to be fair.
Sorry?
You're taking some sick leave off as
Well,
well.
this is how then ultimately it came out, because one of my professors then said, "You look extremely well to be so sick." And I'm like, what? And that's where the whole confusion kind of got cleared up. And that's then where also the issues really started, because from that moment
Did you know
onwards-
yourself that they'd mixed up?
I
the
had no
sick?
idea.
Or you had no idea? as
For a
well?
year, I
Wow.
had, or however many months, close to a year, I had no idea until that conversation where, "Oh, you've all been thinking I had cancer all this time. Oh, okay."
And Benji, when you came back from India, how did your relationship change with the word God? Or was this now your relationship with the Guru going? Because this is a big thing that
Yeah,
you
good
spoke about offline, that, about the connection with Guru Sahib. And it's quite nice because obviously we're so blessed if we have Sangat, and it's very hard if you don't have Sangat. But in this story so far, Saza, you had a direct relationship, Sangat, with the Guru.
Yeah.
So how did that relationship grow in that time with Guru Sahib Ji, or God, how you want to say it?
I think from the experiences in Amritsar Sahib, I started being okay with the whole word God and with reincarnation. As in, Maharaj just took all doubt away. Like I can't even put any words to that. Like my whole reality shifted really quickly. And I think I just rolled with the punches at that point. I wasn't questioning anything that was happening. I don't even know how to say this. Like, for example, when I went to visit my parents with a turban, that was a big thing because they thought I'd become an extremist Muslim. That was their own, like their only,
Head covering reason.
why would you? And they was like, "You're not welcome like this. So either take that thing of your head," they said, "or you're not welcome." I was like, "Okay, then we go back home."
Was that your last interaction with family?
It wasn't the last interaction, but after that, it was extremely difficult. And we're at a point where I've been completely disowned, so I have no interaction as such. And it was very difficult for a decade, with many years of nothing. But there was kind of no question in my mind. Somehow Maharaj has just, all the questions that I had and all the skepticism, it just was pulled out of me. I don't know if that was from drinking the Amrit from the Sarovar in Harmandir Sahib. I don't know how that happened, but it was just eradicated. And there was a lot going on with friends, with colleagues, as in because no one knows who Sikhs are, what Sikhi is. My friends thought I'd joined a cult. There was an intervention at work because there was the assumption that I joined a cult, so there was an intervention. And for me, there was this weird switch of, "But you're a scientist and you're so narrow-minded." Well, 2 months before, I was the exact same. Don't talk to me about God, narrow-mindedness. And all of that instantly left. So it wasn't a process, and it wasn't through any of my doing. Maharaj just removed a veil there. From that point, I first started going into Sangat in Belgium, in Sint-Truiden, to the Gurdwara Sahib a few times. No, actually, not even at that point. I came to a Sikh retreat in the UK first, 2010.
Okay.
Um,
And that was your first major interaction?
That was
with-
my major interaction with Punjabis and with Sikhs, because obviously in India, I didn't have interactions really with anyone. And so through Maharaj Kripa, I ended up coming through a friend of mine. She said, "Come with me." She was, I don't know if I should say it in that way, but it felt like she was exploring Sikhi as an option, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just kind of seeing what's going on here.
Dipping her toes in, and she didn't stay. But so that was my first full-on interaction for a week with Punjabi Sikhs. I was meant to be preparing for a job interview to become a full professor at Antwerp, like University in Antwerp. And instead I came to the retreat, and I thought, I'll take some time out to prepare. Yeah, that didn't happen. And I wasn't interested in the interview afterwards anyway anymore. Because after that week, I decided this is what my life is going to be. And then again, Maharaj just created circumstances. I went a few times to one of the Gurdwara Sahibs in Belgium, in Sint-Truiden, which wasn't too far from where I lived. It was the next city. But But the Sangat there, it was hard to converse about the questions I had because they came from such a different perspective. People there were very much trying to build a life, settle, as in they'd all come after 84. They hadn't been around for a couple of generations. They'd been fairly new and trying to kind of find their feet economically, kids in school. My questions were about entirely different. My reality was entirely different. And that's where at the retreat, for example, the one that I went to then, that resonated a lot more of what people there were looking
similar
for.
backgrounds, born in the
Exactly,
Western world,
yes.
speak English fluently, etc.
And so I started traveling to London every week. Good thing about working at university, because you're doing your, especially in the area where I was working in, you're doing your research in the library or I'd be doing conferences. So I was barely ever at the office anyway. That wasn't, you could work from home or from any library or, so I would leave on Thursday or Friday, come to Southall, stay here for the weekend, go back to Belgium on the Monday or Tuesday.
What year are we talking about that in?
So this is 2010, 2011. Yeah,
Space
so-
and Sikhi Gatha, that started then?
No, not yet.
No, not
That
yet.
wasn't
So
even at that
before-
point. Jagraj Singh, in that time, started doing his katas.
Yeah.
But I'd started coming before that time, so there wasn't even English katas. I was just literally Gurdwara Sahib, hopping, going from Kirtan to Kirtan to Kirtan to Kirtan to Kirtan, and sing Sangat.
Wow.
And so there was me traveling a whole lot. And that was solidifying this idea of, I can't imagine or envision a different life, but am I moving? That wasn't really clear either. And the way that Guru Sahib created it is just at the time where at my university they started catching on what was going on, as in with the turban, I mean. I got a offer from Penn University in Philadelphia for an academic chair for 6 months. So I could move there for 6 months, which I then did. And that's where I got the opportunity to actually live a daily life in Sangat, as in after work, go to the Gurdwara Sahib, live in the Sangat there. And those 6 months really solidified it for me. It's like, I'm not going back to Belgium because I can't live there. Also at the same time, in Belgium, new laws were passed, kind of following on from what was happening in France at the time, that you couldn't wear any religious symbols. So at that point, when I came back from Philadelphia after 6 months, there was a big question: do I go back to university here, continue my job? But then at that time, there was a clear choice. You can only do that if you no longer wear the star, because that's...
Someone actually said that to you, or was it implied?
Yeah.
Literally, those words were said.
Yeah, those words were said.
We're only going to take you serious.
And I then went to, kind of like sign on at the job center type of thing. And they said, you're not going to find a job like this, as in that's illegal now in Belgium. And that helped to make the decisions like, okay, I'll leave the country then. And so I had the choice. You're going to laugh so much. I had the choice of going to New York, because I had the offer of starting a yoga studio there, or coming to Coventry. Guess what I chose?
Coventry.
Wow.
Yeah. I think largely because I wanted to keep the option open if this doesn't work out.
Yeah.
As in, this is my ego thinking, like that was any of my choice, right? But my thinking around it is, if it doesn't work out, I'm not too far from Belgium. I can go back and
It's a
revisit
train ride
this.
away kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maharaj, it was just written that I had to be Coventry, obviously, and then I ended up in Leicester, and I liked Leicester, and I'm still there. So
Right.
it was.
Crossed over.
I'm where I need to be. Yeah. That's a very long answer to that very first question, isn't it?
No, it was great. Thank you so much. And I think there's a few questions that we have written down, but I think you've already answered them. So, like, there's one about the specific moment or experience that led you to decide to embrace Sikhi. To me, from what I've heard, but please correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like as soon as you had Vaheguru, like your journey started from that moment.
Yeah, and then especially just the experience in Harmandir Sahib of just melting into that. And I think very much because that was an experience that I'd been reading up, like as a kid when I was reading mystical literature from Catholic tradition. That was what intrigued me, what pulled me, what drove me, even when I'd left Catholicism altogether and become an atheist, but I'd still had that being intrigued enough to study within my academic studies to study mystic literature, it hadn't left me entirely. And I think that experience was so powerful. Yeah.
And just thinking a little bit about, and it's not here to bash Catholicism or anything, but the questions you had, were they answered very
Yeah.
quickly?
Yeah. And immediately in that first retreat that I went to, and like the retreat doesn't exist anymore, but it wasn't one of the like the
Mainstream.
regular camps. It was Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj wasn't there at the retreat. But all the talks were exactly about the questions I'd had. There we go. Okay, my questions are being answered here. So that started solidifying, this is my place to be.
People
But it
find-
wasn't like, let me try this out because I've been trying out other
Yeah.
things. I know lots of people like, oh, I've tried out this, I've tried out that. Oh, okay, now I'm getting answers in Sikhi that I didn't get elsewhere. Yes, to a certain extent, but it was already decided at that point for me.
But even there's people trying out. I think this is where the idea of Garam comes, and Karma comes from in an English way. It comes is some people's Garam is written, and
Yeah.
no matter where you are in a part of the world or wherever you can be, whether it's up, sick, around, Punjabis aren't or not, you'll be found, and the Guru will find you and bring you closer to himself, rather than you trying something out and let's see if it works for me.
And the fact that Bhai Sahib, the bookshop keeper, said it in those clear words, of course, was a big catalyst, I think, in it as well. As in, it was just so clearly spelled out. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, Benji, just going back to going to Darbar Sahib, just when I used to live abroad, there was a guy I met, an uncle, and he's a proper Khan Bean in that sense. He was a typical Punjabi drinker. He lived in Brunei, drinker, big kind of big guy as well, to be fair. So you could take a fair. And he went back to Punjab and did his thing in Punjab. He came back, had a little business in Brunei. And all he goes, I went to Darbar Sahib before going onto the airplane. I did Matha Tekya. I left, and then as he was flying out, he saw the name of the airport, Guru Ram Das Ji, whoever the name of the airport is. And he goes, just by seeing the name of Guru Ram Das, he would, on that flight, Dhan Guru Ram Das, all the way back, Henry Brunei, never cut his hair, stopped booze, stopped drinking, changes the whole life around. And when it was Guru Ram Das' Guru Purb in Brunei, he would open it. These people were living, first generation of Sikh to be in Brunei. There's only 200 of us in the country. And he'd open his whole house, which he had on rent, but to say to other people who were renting other rooms, let me have your room for 2 days, your space, and your divan at home. You think, just by seeing Guru Ram Das' name, and having no understanding of Sikhi himself. He didn't have a background understanding, but just by seeing Guru Ram Das' name, doing Darshan of Guru Ram Das and Matha Tek in Harbandar Sahib, it changed his life, and a similar experience on your side as well. So once you were in Leicester, Benji, then how did you navigate Sikhi and yourself and the community? And so you're exposed to more Punjabis now, more Punjabi Sikh who are majority of the Sikh community.
Yeah. So I ended up being blessed with Amrit. I didn't have to sit with that Itcha for luckily too much longer anymore. But yeah, so I got blessed in Soho Road, Gurdwara Sahib, with Amrit on Vaisakhi 2012. And so when I moved to Leicester, I was recently Amritdhari. Even the choice, as if there is any, because it's already written where we're going to take our meals, but of the house where I ended up and where I'm still living, how it was rationalized. I was doing a house share with someone. To get to the house, you had to pass, I don't know if you're familiar with Leicester, but there's a roundabout with 2 Nishan Sahibs.
Yes,
Near Guru Nanak Gurdwara Sahib.
Yeah.
Well, we live just behind there. So even like now it's built up, but from the house we could see the Nishan Sahibs. And just passing the Nishan Sahibs, I was like, yeah, this house, because I'll have to pass the Nishan Sahibs every day. That's just fantastic. And it's on the roundabout, so everyone is doing Parikrama of the Nishan Sahib. So it was, and I'm still in that house, it was just, it was laid out
Felt
in a
right
way.
in that
Everything in that journey was just laid out. So been there for a long time now, since 2012. I had, of course, left my entire academic career, so my whole job and my family when I moved here. I didn't really know what to do with work. I ended up starting teaching yoga first, and then I became a holistic therapist.
And that's what you practice now for most.
Yeah, so I'm a holistic therapist, I'm a nutritionist, I'm a doula, I teach massage, I train people in certain massages. Yeah, that's what I do. And that's been all the while. As in, I didn't go back to any academic career.
In terms of where you were in Belgium to now you've ended up in Leicester from, in one respect being abandoned by family, you could say, your
Yeah, very much.
country, your job, everything's kind of been uprooted what you were before to where you've come in Leicester.
Yeah.
The hardship that you felt. How did you feel going through that? Did you feel like it was, because the way you're explaining it to us right now, when I listen to your podcast, it seems like it was like it didn't really affect you.
It did,
Yeah.
but
How did you
it
deal with
was
that as well?
somehow like I had this, I don't know how to, the only image I have for it is that there was this inner compass just saying you need to just keep walking this way.
Hmm.
You just need to keep walking this way. And it was also as if there was no choice in the matter anyway. But it wasn't easy, as in, even in the years at university when I was starting to wear the start, I lost all my friends. I lost my family. I was literally forbidden to have any contact with any other family members, like by my parents. I have not spoken to my brother other than a text for happy birthday, for example, for 15 years. So I'd literally lost everything and everyone.
How did you get through that, Benji? Because it's not easy, losing your family.
Yeah, initially I would still send, for example, emails to my mum. Like my dad had a really hard time with it, so not really to him, but to my mum. But it was so alien for them. One, they didn't know anything about Sikhi. Two, I don't think it was ever on their radar. I don't think it is for any parent that their child is going to do such a big thing. And then given that my parents were absolute atheists, this is like, you were an academic, and with that I was at the top of my field, as in it wasn't just like small fish academic, as in I led a network of 600 people who were much, much older than me, of professors that I was at the head of. So I had like this status that came with it, and I walked away from the whole thing. And they were like, I was the first one of my family to ever go to university, so they were extremely proud of that. And then, what is she doing? We've worked our entire lives to give these chances that we never got, and she's just turning her back on it. Plus, and I guess that might be a typical, I don't know if that's a typical Belgian thing, a typical village thing, a typical whatever thing, but what are people going to say about this? What is the community going to say about
that
this?
Punjabi before, haven't we?
Like the conversations I had with them is like, well, if you really want to do this, can't it be like invisible to the world then? As in, do it in the privacy of your own home, but why does it have to be so obvious? And why does it have to inform every choice you're making? And there was, a lot of, we do not understand why you're making these choices because they don't make sense. You're walking away from a really good job that people would do anything for. You're walking away from a comfortable country to a country where things aren't as easy, which is true. It was much easier in Belgium. You're walking away from the life you've built, all your friends. You're alienating anyone and everyone from yourself. Why? That was a complete... I think my grandparents would have probably understood better because they had faith themselves. But my parents, that wasn't at all. So the conversations were really difficult. And I would go back to Belgium. I tried to keep the connection with my parents. I would travel back. There's a good few times where I turned up at the door and the door was shut in my face, like you're not welcome. And then with persistence, mum would let me in, but my dad would be so uncomfortable, and this is for various years, that when I would walk into a certain room, he would walk out. He couldn't sit across me. He couldn't face me. He didn't see his daughter anymore.
What kept you going in this time period of, what kept you going Sikhi-wise? Like,
Sangat,
some people would give
Guru
up,
Sahib,
right? Yeah.
just Maharaj's blessings. Maharaj kept me really, really close, even though not only did I have some challenges there, but also in those first years of coming into Sikhi and Sangat, I had to learn a hard way that it's not because someone wears a dastar and has a dari that they're trustworthy people, or that they might not be, insert any like swear word basically. That was a hard lesson, and that wasn't one. I was very naive. I was very naive.
Everything was
coming
a
into Sikhi.
tinted rose glass.
Of course,
Everything's
and
settled up, right?
everyone who looks like this, who has that roop, is going to be a saint. That was my understanding, or that was my naivety. That was absolutely not the case, and I got my lessons in the first years of that really, really quickly.
I think we all learned those lessons, and I think it's important that we reiterate that not everyone who's got a beard and turban's intentions are good. They're not all saints or anything. They're just, some of them are just crooks, I guess.
Yeah, and if you
That's
look like
life.
this with a white face and all naive, like
Mm.
it's popping up on certain people's radars really, really quickly as well, of course. So you're easy prey.
Yeah.
So that journey in the first years was hard.
Is that
It was really hard.
in the UK?
It was
then?
in the UK. Yeah, that was really hard. But I also had good Sangat and Maharaj. Ultimately, you just go through the karma that you need to go through, right? As in, you can blame all kinds, but it's just your own karma that's to
definitely.
blame. I think I have a certain level-headedness alongside the naivety that would just keep me grounded as well, and just Maharaj good on my head.
It's a bit of a silly question, Benji, but I think it's a really good question from somebody who lives in the world. In terms of where you were, and you asked the question yourself rhetorically, from having such a successful job, being at the top, it seems that life, in terms of a worldly sense, was all there.
Yeah.
Why? Why did you give that all up then? Why did you give up all of that for this Sikhi?
For me, it couldn't go hand in hand. And the academic world, I don't think it's changed, but okay, I've not been part of it for over a decade. It's very much about ego, right? As in, it couldn't go hand in hand, no matter what field I was working in. Great literature, a bit less ego than in some other fields, but still that's what everything is about. I hated networking events. In those years that I was in Sikhi and still working at university, I was also teaching yoga at university. As in, during the lunch breaks, I'd taken over that initial class. Backtracking to the beginning of the conversation, I'd taken over that initial class. That was the only bit about the day that I was really excited about. The rest of the work wasn't really interesting anymore. And I spend a lot of my time behind my computer researching Sikhi, not actually working. Funnily enough, those were also the years I was most successful at my work. I wasn't working so much anymore. I was distracted with many other things, but I was at the top of that network. I was showing up at big conferences in the Stad. I went to South Vietnam and I had to head a conference, South Korea, and I had to head a conference with the Stad on the only person there. It was really weird. Because it's already weird to be a young woman. I was in my early 30s at this point, so it was quite a unique thing to be like a young woman in that position. But then wearing a star, and it couldn't work together for me. It couldn't work together. I was not happy doing it anymore either. I think the best way of describing it, I started feeling like I was tricking everyone around me. In order to do that job, you had to be invested in that job. And I wasn't anymore. I was really looking at it, and I'd started making comments also, which of course you're not meant to do, but for example, in the coffee room to colleagues, like, we're taking ourselves really seriously here, aren't we? As in, but ultimately what we're doing, and especially in the field I was working in, 19th century literature, I'm sorry, this is not life-changing, and this is going to rescue anyone, or we've just created this illusion that we all need to keep alive in order to think we're all that important. And I'm traveling around the world for conferences, but there's maybe 5 or 7 people sitting in the audience, and we're making it out to be oh so important.
Means nothing.
It means nothing. And I was happy living in that illusion until then. But the whole point in Sikhi is that you start going beyond these illusions, right? I couldn't trick myself or anyone else into that illusion anymore. It didn't feel right, fair, correct, true. None of it felt true anymore.
You don't want to play that game anymore, essentially.
No,
Yeah,
exactly. It was a game, and I couldn't muster kind of the distance that I had to cover mentally every day to keep playing the game. But if you don't play the game and you kind of question it, you get a whole lot of backlash. So
But you're gonna make me resign from my job as well. I'm playing the game at the moment.
I absolutely couldn't anymore. I had to do something that I could feel was truthful. And somehow, well, that didn't involve any employed work anymore. The only option was to work for myself.
And that's hopefully worked out well for you.
Yeah, I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. I don't regret those years. They inform to a large extent how I work and like my ways of doing research, but in an entirely different field, into health.
And you currently, just so the Sangha to know, currently you said you mentioned it, and a number of avenues that you do support people in are kind of almost, it's a bit like Seva, that you're helping people live their best life, I
Yeah.
guess, and overcome trauma or whatever it might be. And you still teach a lot of yoga as well, Benji?
So I
online?
still teach some yoga. That's been this ongoing, what do I do with that? And it was funny because I think it was last night or this morning I was contemplating on this. I sometimes wish the yoga journey hadn't been in there. I also am extremely grateful that immediately Punjabi Sangat turned up through the Sikh retreat, the initial one, and then all the camps, and just moving here and coming into Punjabi Sangat. So I didn't have the 3HO bits clouding because there's a lot
Influencing
going
you,
on there still. But what I was thinking this morning, if it hadn't been through the physical side of doing yoga and the meditation that comes with it, I don't know how I could have possibly come into Sikhi in a way that, okay, this is my own mind, right? This isn't because Maharaj arranges it, but I couldn't sit. In my first yoga classes, my knees were up to my ears. I was not a flexible person. I couldn't sit still. I was very fidgety. I wouldn't have made it through a divan, or I would have been uncomfortable sitting on the floor. It was almost like it had to go through my body.
And strengthen your body almost.
And get rid of all the toxins from the drugs and the alcohol and the tobacco. I needed to clear out a lot. And the way in which I often describe that to students, making kind of the analogy like, why would you do yoga? If you want to play an instrument, like Tanti said, you need to tune it. If you want to have Gurbani resonating with inside yourself, you have to tune
the vessel,
those nadis inside as well. They were so out of tune for me. They weren't as a kid. Now I see that it was so in tune, like most kids are, right? It's that connection so strong, and that completely got disrupted. Actually, in ways where I was trying to refine that connection as I had as a kid, but the only models I had around me was try drugs, try drinking, go beyond like this Maya. You do it in the ways that you see other people do it. That was the only ways of kind of going beyond what I was experiencing on the daily basis. But I had to go, I think, through that way in some way to just clear everything out. And it helped me greatly. Now it's not part of my practice, but in hindsight, I see how it helped me. And I see still how it helps certain students. I teach a class in the Gurdwara Sahib, and I see how much the Benjis get out of that. Just even if it is because they get an hour of undisturbed meditation practice, because be a bibi in a divan hall, you'll be taking care of your own kids or someone else's kids, or going to make prasadi in the langar hall. Like, it's never really uninterrupted. So it's not about the yoga, but it's about what it kind of, the space it opens up, or the ways in which it can help focus on your part. As in, that was where it went for me. How can I sit more easily? How can I make my mind focused? How can I clear a whole lot of stuff out?
So it sounds like yoga was almost your entry into Sikhi.
Yeah, definitely.
Your definition of Sikhi.
Yeah, and it had to be, but it didn't define
your
it didn't define
with the Guru,
my type of Sikhi or anything like that. Like, are you a 3HO Sikh? That. But it almost had to be that way. I think it's hard to conceive of any way in a country where there's hardly any Sikhs. Like, how is it going to happen? So Maharaj just created that avenue.
Is it worth defining 3HO Sikh are mainly American Sikh followers
in Europe now as well.
In Europe as well.
Yeah.
So followers of Yogi Bhajan and very kind of yoga focused, and got no issue.
But very much all the cultivations
yoga,
and the like everything that Yogi Bhajan has twisted around ultimately.
So yoga is their focus, but what we're talking about is a focus of Guru Sahib in the center of our journey, not
exactly
the postures of yoga. And yoga is great for the idea. I've done a little bit over the years as well. Help the knees. But yeah, do you so you still do practice yoga and teach it?
I teach it. I barely practice it.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes any sense. As in, I practice it in the classes, but like my own spiritual practice is my bhakti, is going to Kirtan Divans particularly. As in, it's through Kirtan, it's through my bhakti. From that first moment, that's where the connection started, and it's not shifted in that way at all.
You know, you mentioned the other podcast that you did, and I thought it was a very interesting point about the non-Punjabis and the Punjabis and interaction. And I can't remember what you said specifically about how for some reason, in some cases, there's not that mix. Like those are non-Punjabis at the free shows and stuff, and they're very separate to the mainstream Sikhi Punjabis that you see. Why do you think that's the case? And is there a way that we could build that bridge between the two?
Because we all are sick ultimately. We're going
yeah.
to bridge that gap and work together, collectively. So how do we as Punjabis reach out to non-Punjabis or bring more non-Punjabis in and say, look, you're just as much as a Sikh as I am. How do we collectively build our communities?
I think it very much depends on the entry point of the non-Punjabi Sikhs to a large extent. With that, I mean, and this is again only in the last couple of years that I started understanding the extent of this. I would come across in those first years being in a yoga community, let's then call it the 3HO Sangat, a lot of arrogance. A lot of Punjabis have no clue what they're doing. They've lost the plot. They're stuck in cultural ways. That might be true to a certain extent.
There's a challenge
I'm not
you
saying
also
that's
can
not the
navigate as
case
well,
because we see plenty of that too.
Yeah.
But this was completely fed into by Yogi Bhajan's teachings because he absolutely wanted to keep those communities separate because he knew how much Punjabis were onto what he was doing.
Bust him up.
And the more that you can keep that completely separate, the less of that questioning comes into what he was building for himself, which was completely Yogi Bhajan centered ultimately, with a lot of twisting of
Concepts and
Gurbani,
ideas,
of Sikhi, like to a large extent. And that was his barrier to build. And with that, he would, and talk to 3HO people who have left entirely, both Sikhi and the yoga community. They were made out to believe that they were some chosen people, literally those words. They were the chosen people who would change Sikhi. I have a video that I posted on my social media where Yogi Bhajan claims that he established the Khalsa. Can you imagine this?
He's very kind of cultish, isn't he? In that
He established the Khalsa, and that was with the white. I only saw that video a year ago. I had no clue that it was to that extent because I wasn't part of any of that community in that extent. But so very cultish, closed off. And that has seeped very much into the European community as well. So within there, it's going to be seen that you guys have no clue what you're doing. Yeah. And only they know. And a lot of being so adulterated. But it's hard to break that down. If I had not had my first experiences in that Sikh retreat of 2010, I would have been right there, I think.
Sucked up in that.
Absolutely. I was so lucky that in the first steps of my journey, Maharaj said, not there, go here. Because if your ego is being built up to that extent that you're some kind of chosen people within, break that down later. No, that's not going to happen. That's absolutely not going to happen. That's where you get that spiritual ego entirely coming in. So I think until that is completely broken down, and in some extent that's being broken down by everything that's been happening within that community, but you've got many who are still really entrenched, even more so now, with the questioning around what was Yogi Bhajan doing there. As long as those walls are up, I don't think you can break through that. Only Maharaj themselves can do that. I don't think as a pracharak or as a sangat you can do much about that. I don't know how to, and I've stopped having relationships. I've stopped the conversations with so many people because, that's just that's not going anywhere.
And how have you found in the Punjabi community towards you? As you mentioned in the past, being a Caucasian or white Gursikh Bibi.
So as I moved, I didn't know any other white Sikhs, not in the Midlands. There were a few here in Southall. Obviously, Sukhmani Penji was here. There were a few others. And I knew Sukhmani Penji and Jagrat Singh from those early days, thankfully. But in the Midlands, there weren't any. I had a couple of people who were very fantastic sangat. I noticed, and I can understand it now, and I'm almost the same, I guess, now. I noticed a lot of hesitance, as in just sussing it out. And I can understand that now because I've seen a lot of people coming to Sikhi and go out. Non-Punjabis and Punjabis both, by the way, as in staying for a bit, typically then quite dressed up in Bana and Big Sister and
Have
the
a great
nicest
look
of Malay,
around.
and then suddenly completely gone, right? But we see it, it's not a non-Punjabi thing necessarily. We see it with Punjabis just as much, I think.
I think all faith communities struggle with this idea of dressing up, looking the part, and then actually having a meaningful relationship and a meaningful.
But so, yeah, I was being sussed out for a bit, and I was like the Gaudi for a large extent.
We are
And yet
quite
I was
suspicious.
welcomed, as in, it might not always be warmly. I didn't have too many uncomfortable things. One Guru Sahib, where I really didn't feel welcome. Okay, I stopped going there and seek out another one. One of the reasons I'm still in Leicester is because I really like the community, and it's close to many other places. But I'm also the kind of person, I'm still quite onto myself, in that sense of I never know what's going on basically in people's. I'm the last one to know of something that's happened. I'm not part of the gossip circuit. I never know what's going on, and I'm really glad about that. For me, going into Sangat is, Singh and I, we will go to the Gurdwara Sahib, we will go to the daily Kirtan Divan. We barely know anyone's name. We barely speak to people other than a Fateh. And I very much like that. I don't like to hang around after programs. Initially, yes, I actually did. I would hang around a lot because I needed to build some kind of
Community and
I had no
network.
one, yeah. So I had to start with building community and getting friends. But that's really shifted over the years. I just want to go do my bhakti, get out, and not be embroiled. Is that the word? Like in everything that's going on after that. I really appreciate sitting in Sangat and not knowing about people's personal lives, so that my mind can't go to their defects, and it can be just as in, oh, this person is here every day. They're doing seva every day. Just getting that inspiration from the people I have daily sangat of, who I don't know anything about. And for me, I've had to learn that wasn't the initial years. I'd be the person who'd be staying longest at any program, and because I was trying to build a life and getting to know people. That's completely changed. I'd like to leave and not lose the fall of my bhakti, not have all the conversations. I might sound or come across really rude at some points, like really not wanting to have that conversation afterwards and trying to just get out and get home.
It's beautiful advice if you think about it, not getting caught up in the rat race, in the gossiping and all the,
Because it's
this
so easy
person
to start doing
it helps no one, and that way you have no judgment against anyone. It's very neutral, and you've got the same and equal amount of love and respect for everyone you see, and you're not judging anyone to be.
It's so easy for our minds, I think, to get caught up in, oh, what's he or she wearing? What's he or she doing? Oh, they're talking while they're doing their seva. They shouldn't. All the stuff that our mind constantly gets caught in, instead of listening to kata or doing your simran or singing kirtan or whatever it might be. So for me, the less I know about someone, the less my mind has of a hook to go into stories. That works for me. And that's how we like to do it.
And then just, you've almost given the advice there anyway, but what advice would you give to someone, so not Japji Benji 15 years in, but someone at the very beginning of their journey? What advice would you give them as they start looking and asking questions and wanting to embrace Sikhi? What advice would you give them to have a long, blissful relationship with the Guru, which goes on over a long period of time?
Build your relationship with the Guru.
How?
Like that should be your focus. Sangat is going to help you. If you notice that you're in Sangat that's not helping you, get out of that Sangat, find better Sangat. Do ardas for good Sangat. That was one of the biggest ardasa for me for so long. Like, just Maharaj, just keep giving me good Sangat, because I had the non-good Sangat. Like, keep giving me good Sangat. Go and see Guru Sahib every day. I know it's such a simple thing, but if you can do that and build that personal relationship with Guru and trust him. Just trust Guru Sahib first and foremost. Trust him only. I think I took that far in how Singh and I got married, as in he was in India and I was here, and we just took Hukam Nama Sahib, and that's what I went on only. And it's really funny because Jagraj Singh literally said to my face that I was absolutely mad for doing that. And then funnily enough, Maharaj showed Jagraj Singh that I wasn't, because he met Singh in Chandigarh at a divan before we were married and before I had met Singh. And then Jagraj Singh texted me, I've met Jagraj Singh. So I text Jagraj Singh, oh, you've met the Singh that I'm engaged to. And he's like, oh, yeah, go with it. Like, so his mind needed to be put at ease. but just trust Guru Sahib. Typically, if you're coming into Sikhi, you've realized that trusting your own mat hasn't gotten you very far. At least if you were going in the circles that I was going in, I had gotten to the point of, nah, if I trust my own mind, I'm getting absolutely nowhere. Trust Guru Sahib. Even if it makes no sense, even if it is incredibly scary, work through that. Do it even if it is scary. I've had a lot of non-Punjabi people who would contact me when they're thinking of taking Amrit. Like, what would you advise? One of my big advices there, and I don't know if that's an advice you would give, but it's been one of mine. Don't think you need to be perfect, because that will make your mind think that you can do it without Guru Sahib. Well, that's the completely wrong way of going in. You should go in, that's my perception, realizing I can't do it without Guru Sahib. I stand no chance. And I come in utter despair and humility of, I stand no chance doing this without you. So just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Coming committed, not dipping in your feet, because I don't think that works either.
Success, you never get success.
No, like exploring it and trying it out. That's not how you go and ask for Amrit. Like that's a begging for Amrit that you do. But if you expect yourself to be a perfect Sikh, you haven't, I think, understood what happens when you're blessed with Amrit and what Guru Sahib does from then on in that moment. Like, as in, they take over.
I think this is such an important conversation, Benji, in terms of, you mentioned this earlier offline about exploring the idea of spirituality, Sikhi, and these kind of things. And I think in today's world, especially when people start looking towards spirituality, and this comes to a question, which is that religion versus spirituality versus Sikhi. And like, I've been in circles where I've been speaking to people of a Sikh background, but if I use the word religion, because I don't care about the word really, but they're like, when they hear the word religion, they think, oh, spirituality,
Dharam.
or Sikhi.
Why don't we use Dharam?
Yeah, exactly. But the point I'm trying to make though is, when it comes to all these things, where people, especially they start going on the spiritual path, what I'm getting from you basically is there's the spiritual path, but then there's the guru.
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of people feel like when they start learning about spirituality, they start learning about these techniques, mantras and so on. It's like, it becomes about that and it doesn't become about the guru. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that? That whole conversation is it's hard for me to articulate, but I'm seeing a lot today as well.
Yeah, and it's like almost a picking and choosing.
Yeah.
It's becoming very new age, right? Is that where we're going? As in,
yes, and the picking and choosing definitely as well.
That's not the Guru's path though. There is nothing new age about that. It's a very committed path. It's a,
because the other side is very trendy, right? It's the idea.
yeah,
This is what's
I'll
trendy
integrate
now.
this and I'll do a bit of this. And
well, this is commitment. This is discipline.
it's absolutely a path of commitment.
Yeah.
You have to work through your ego. The other path is one for me very much driven by an ego, but like a spiritual dressed up ego almost.
Looking like a changed person.
I like this.
Yeah.
I'll integrate the things that I like. Well, this path has been a whole lot of things I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone committed to Sikhi, there's been a whole lot of things that you have to do that you don't like.
Yeah.
As you're working through things,
It's hard waking up every morning.
it's hard work. You have to face so much that if you'd be choosing the things you'd like, you'd have walked away a million times.
It begs the question, Ben, what's driving you to continue on this path? Or is it the Sangat? Is it the Kirtan? Is it the Bhagati? It's
I think that question, for me, if you phrase it in that way, you make it about the person and you set them up for failure, because now it is something inside themselves that...
Do you think they
that-
drive
yeah,
their motivation or their skills?
It's Guru Sahib's Kirpa.
Yeah.
It's your karam.
Yeah.
Yes, you're creating that karam ongoing, but I don't think any of this is in my control. I can keep begging. I can keep doing ardas. I can keep doing my best. That best is not great. And yet, Guru Sahib does kirpa that I can stay in their charan. But ask that. Like, ask the good things in your ardas. When you're standing in front of Guru Sahib, that's been my journey with ask the right things. Ask that your head can stay there. Ask that if your ego takes over, Maharaj quickly gives you a slap around, in whichever way, be that through Hukum Namasa, be that through your Sangat putting you straight. Choose Sangat that puts you straight. Really funny for me was when I came into Sikhi in that first retreat, and my Sangat was very London-based, and they would say, and I know that you're all London-based, right? But they would say, don't go up to the Midlands, because they're a lot, you're not going to feel comfortable there. They're a lot stricter. It would have been the downfall for me if I had stayed here. I needed much stricter. I needed that because I would have gone into the picking and choosing, doing as I please, as I like. I married a Singh with a really, really strict rat, which caused plenty of arguments, like, does it have to be this strict? But we're going on to the really strict side of the spectrum. For me, I need that because I know how easily my ego would lead me astray otherwise. I
think sometimes
that might change again at another. There's been an evolution in that as well.
And you
But
grow
the-
in ways and you see, but over to Riyadh, a lot of people think keeping Riyadh is almost, you're restricting yourself, you can't
it's
do that, you
not.
can't eat here, idani gani. And I know the Gyani seems often say, and especially the older generation would say, your Riyadh is not a restriction, it's keeping you safe. It's putting parameters, it's putting almost like in a boxing ring, you've got a little bit of support on the sides and of the ring, so you don't fall out of the ring. And, and those who don't keep that Riyadh or keep some sort of discipline in their life, they're the ones who are falling out of the ring, off onto the floor, and they're going, they're better than they were before, but in fact, they're worse than they were before. We see that a lot because, and our Riyadh is what's here to protect us and keep us. And no one's saying being boring, and no one's saying don't have fun, don't do things, or don't go traveling. No one's saying anything like that, but they are saying there are some boundaries in place that Sikh live within, and that is our Riyadh, that is our discipline, that is our commitment to the Guru, to receive the Guru's blessings.
And that was for me, like, growing up Catholic, Catholicism has its harsh parts to it. And then having, like, I don't want to have anything to do with God anymore, that did initially put up a lot of, my ego would get really triggered by, you're telling me what I can and cannot do? Because I was looking for the spiritual path and the easy path, right? And I'm so glad that Guru Sahib just took the driver's seat in there. In such a strong way, but like, it would have been my downfall staying in London and going with the, just do it in the way that suits you. I would have been worse off. I still think that if I see someone who's come into Sikhi, especially if they've maybe taken up and then leave, like, my heart breaks because, like, I would find myself to be much worse off than if before I'd found Guru Sahib. Like that, to lose that chance. I can't even imagine that. I think that's the worst of the worst.
I think I'd be on the streets if it wasn't for the Guru in that sense. I'd be on the streets.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Boozed out or something.
But I would be worse off than where I was before finding.
Yeah.
But yes, that's where it was my journey really of understanding of this Riyadh is keeping me safe. And I think that comes only with being really honest with yourself of how much we're constantly attacked by the Panchchor. And understanding, like, Maharaj is just trying to make this journey easier. They're not trying to punish you. They're not trying to make this hard. They understand what's ahead and what journey you have to take and how incredibly hard it is. And they're trying to make it easy as you get. And that's someone once explaining to me, kind of in the first years of being in Sikhi or being Amritari. And I still don't know to what an extent this is entirely correct. So feel free to say, especially like to people listening, like, okay, throw that out because that's not correct. But it has kept me being able to live this, or to try and keep a strict Riyadh. But that when you take Amrit, when you're blessed with Amrit, we don't take, right? But that Guru Sahib just washes that slate of your karma clean. Right, you get a new name, and that your Riyadh is given so that you keep that slate clean. And I was told by someone, Maharaj, basically all the karma that you've gathered until then, Maharaj has just taken that for you. But if you step out of your Riyadh, or you step out of your bond with the Guru, you get everything back, plus everything that's come on top. But like, your Riyadh is just keep it clean, so that you don't have to come back to put anything right. You're not gathering any further karam. And that's ultimately, if you look at your rat, it's to try to have you not create any further karam.
Any bad karam, yeah.
From this moment on, you can stay absolutely clear of karam, which means if Guru Sahib has taken on everything you'd already had, but I don't, as in, feel free to contradict
No, I don't
here.
see anything wrong with that.
And you don't create anything further. Well, you're done. You're done at this moment. But of course, your own mind is going to come in and try and convince you otherwise, because unfortunately, Guru Sahib didn't take your mind away. Like, they gave you a rat
rational
to
thinking
try and
will
now help
drain
you
it,
deal with your mind. It's now going to be up to you on how much you take that on.
No,
I don't know if I'm making any sense
No,
with
it
this,
makes
but
sense.
it's helped me at least.
to kind of
It's helped me.
stay focused and be focused. And
And it's also helped me, as in, for me, that wasn't a question. I immediately in Harmandir Sahib had that itch had to go and beg for Amrit. But I've heard somebody else, well, we don't need Amrit. Why would you need Amrit? First of all, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Sahib themselves
Took
took Amrit.
Hanji.
But not only that, as in, this for me helps to explain it sometimes to other people as well. As in, if Maharaj themselves made it almost clear to us that they didn't stand a chance, which of course isn't true, right? But it was a message to us how important that journey is to take.
I think it's,
Because of what Maharaj is doing in that moment for us. And then
it is an important message where I think the emphasis on red is severely been reduced.
Absolutely,
in my opinion,
absolutely.
I think we need to bring this idea of keeping red is what we should all aspire to be. Rehtavan, disciplined, Sikh of the Guru, and have parameters in our life, and not everything's okay in that sense. There are rules, and we do follow those rules, and that means that we are different from society and societal norms sometimes. Wearing a damalla, wearing a dastar, having a dara, that's already breaking societal norms, but there's a little bit more to do as well. I know from my work, when I work and everything I do, I wouldn't classify myself as just super strict. I've been very, very strict in my life, and people still think of me as a super strict person, but I'm not. But it's the rehet, which is what is valued by even my employers, because you know what, we're going to give this guy a task, he's going to get it done, no faffing around, no messing around, no excuses, he'll get the job done because he's a disciplined guy, he's a focused guy. I might get it done in 2 hours and chill for the hour, and that's all good because they know they've got someone who they can trust. And I think with less red, we're starting to kind of create a generation of Sikh who are, not reliable, not trustworthy. They're the opposite of what but they look exactly like me. And again, I can easily fall into that category as well. So just trying to say the emphasis of red, I think is important. We do bring that about again.
And yet, we kept using my rat. VJ did translate discipline, just in case anybody doesn't know what that means as well. And it's quite interesting because even though this whole series is called Finding Sikhi, it's almost the way you're speaking about Benji is, like you said earlier, it's not really finding Sikhi, it's when the Guru found you kind of thing. I think it's a beautiful perspective. And I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from this podcast and from your journey is that it's more about, it's more centered around Guru Sahib Ji rather than the individual in terms of, and I think that's such an important message for everybody that Benji gave earlier about build your connection and your relationship with Guru Sahib Ji.
It's your personal relationship with Guru Sahib, and that for me, one of the crucial positives of what happened with my family relationship, or all my family relationships, is that Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj became all those relationships with me, and that was so much kirpa. As in, I didn't have a relationship with a mother, with a father, with any siblings, with any grandparents. Maharaj became all of those relationships. That's where you're starting to build personal relationship with Guru Sahib, and that's where that love takes on all those forms. And that's where the New Age bit, I think, comes in so much. Like, love then becomes, but love is different. Love is what keeps you tied. What keeps you obedient, what keeps you asking to not ever be taken anywhere else. Just like that would be in your family relationships or with your close ones, like you don't want to leave them ever, right? That relationship, and I'm by no means saying to people like leave all your family relationships. Like for me, that was just how it happened. That's how Maharaj set it up, as in let me take all those roles.
It's beautiful. There's Pankti we read in the Sampradaya, Tumman chodo, Hamane chode, on the Pankti that even if you were to let go, Maharaj, of my arm,
I'm
I wouldn't
not-
let go of
yeah,
your arm, mate.
yeah.
You know, it's that relationship, okay, that you don't let go. Even if you were to let go, there's not a conditional relationship here between me and you. There's a condition. You stay committed to me, I stay committed to you. So, you know, even if you, Maharaj, Guru said, you let go of my arm, I wouldn't let go of your arm. And that's the commitment, the discipline, the love, the obedience that we all strive for, and the blessing we ask for from the Guru, that ardas we do.
Just a sort of question that came to mind. It's a bit off topic, but I think it's a very important question. Feel free not to answer it. But again, being from a non-Punjabi background and then getting married as well, I think that's a big thing, especially people that are coming into Sikhi. Like we've met people, even our Sangat, who may be from different faiths, like Hindu faith, and now they want to get married and they want to marry a Sikh, for example. How would you, any advice or experiences on that, marrying a Guru Sikh, marrying whether that's a Punjabi, non-Punjabi Sikh? How has that been for you?
But Baji's here, by the way, just let the world know.
If you want to jump in, Aisa, please feel free to.
I initially, when I moved here, didn't have the itcha to get married. I was happy in just like, let me just do my thing. It was through conversations with Guru Sikhs that I was pointed out over and over, you're going to get into some sort of spiritual ego if you stay. Like, it's very easy to think great of yourself. You want to have a life partner who shows you in how many ways you're not, right? As in that just constant.
Brings you back to earth.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's so easy to start thinking very highly of yourself.
You say that with so much pain.
It's a great blessing. It's not always pleasant in the moment, but it is a really good blessing in the long term, right?
No, मेरे घर बड़ी सुन ना यार. Go listen to this. She's really good.
Yes. And I think it's funny because most people who are trying to look to get married, they're not thinking about that aspect. That's the one that's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
And so I had been, I didn't want to do the dating thing. I mean, I've had a life in Belgium. I didn't want to do that. I asked several people in Sangat, mainly Baljit Singh, to be my Vichola. He did his best. For over a year, he would get the same answers from anyone whom he approached, where it was like, she's white. And that was a big thing.
I didn't realize that was a thing.
And it would be from often the same families who, if they first saw me, were like, like in the good way, but then as a possible wife for their son. No.
Yeah.
And so Baiji gave up and said, like, I can't find anyone for you.
Wow.
And so I thought, okay, well, if you can't find anyone, it's not going to happen, is it? And then I got in touch with Singh on Facebook, and I was like, I'm not speaking to men just to speak. If you're approaching me to get married, we can have that conversation, but then it's just going to be that conversation. And so we did, and we took Hukum Namasab that same day. Baljit Singh actually took it. And that was it. Okay, we get married. If you would have told me even a year before that it would have been in that way, I would have said, no, I'm not getting married to someone I do not know. I didn't want to get married. I wanted to get married to a Punjabi Singh, not a white Singh. At that point, all the white Singhs would have been from the 3HO community, so I didn't want that. I didn't want to get married from anyone in Punjab or India, because I had bad experiences with, as in an inbox full of messages from Singhs in Punjab, as they would do for a lot of us white Benjis. We get completely inundated often by messages in non-nice ways.
Just say, "Viro hard jo na." If Punjabi listening, bande van jo.
It's bad.
It's not good. Yeah.
No, it's bad. And so I think that potentially clouded that. But I was very lucky with the Singh that Maharaj chose. And so we arranged everything. I spoke with his parents. I got married in Chandigarh. I was petrified. I'm not going to say I wasn't. I had looked at Maharaj the entire time through the Anand Karaj. I have no idea who this person is, how this is going to go. Please, Maharaj, just don't let me go. But they hadn't let me go in any other instances. And it was about that trust. And in then those weeks after, there were so many signs of Maharaj, as in, this is how it's meant to be. I don't want to talk about those signs, but it started putting my mind at ease. it wasn't easy, especially with someone grown up in India. Lots of cultural differences on top of any other differences in the sense of I see a lot of couples when they get married, they think, and this might work for some couples, but I know it doesn't for a lot of couples, and they get disappointed as in, oh, from here on, all our bhakti is going to be done together. We're going to be walking this path like together, hand in hand at the same pace, and that's just often not the reality of things.
Definitely, yeah.
So that on top of just anything that marriage brings, and neither of us has any family in the country, as in it was just the two of us. That's not easy. It wasn't easy economically for someone to leave everything, come here, not find a job, have a strict red that prevents certain jobs. As in, yeah, it had plenty of its challenges.
But you worked through them.
Yeah, I think that's again where your connection to Guru Sahib grows, because ultimately they're Parmesar and they're your first relationship. I think for us, from the very beginning, it's been very clear for both of us that our first relationship is with Guru Sahib, and our relationship with each other is in service of that. First priority, first relationship for both of us is with Guru Sahib. That helps, I think, greatly. And I hope my husband is okay with me saying that. I'm sure he stood there in many ways and instances himself in that way. That, like, I have no clue how to do this. I don't know how we're going to get ourselves out of whatever argument we're currently in or whatever we're facing. Please just do this for us. Show us the way. Like, we've had Fere around you, and you're the only one who can move us forward. Because I do not know. I do not know. And I think any Sikh who's married, Singh or Singhini, will probably know that feeling, as in, I don't know. But we have that other relationship, which is the only one really
that keeps us going and
keeps you going, and that your marriage is about.
But one thing I love about this
and that would, sorry, if I may add,
of course,
I think it's really important to somehow suss out if that's going to be the case. Is your relationship going to be in such a way that your relationship is to the Guru, and that person is going to help you build that connection? And that might in ways still be of in them showing your ego coming up, and like, not necessarily in, oh, this is going to be a cushy journey, right? But like, what is your point of reference?
What your values that define you as a couple that you go back to on the lowest and darkest and most challenging days. And
in like almost practical ways, can we have such big of a fight, but that we, even if one of us is going to sit in the back of the car, but can we still go to a Kirtan Divan together, not say a word to each other maybe, but still
take something,
still go and do our bhakti? And can we encourage each other to do that and kind of find a way of breaking down each other's ego to the point of at least don't let that go, even when you don't want to sit with me or sit in the car with me or anything like that? Can you find someone where you can have that kind of relationship with, that's going to keep you connected to Guru Sahib?
It goes back to that bhakti almost, isn't it? The relationship with your spouse isn't conditional. That, it's that, no matter where you go, I will still stay committed to you. I won't commit adultery. I won't go down a route of a path which is going to destroy my faith and my relationship. But one thing I really love about this conversation, Benji, is how honest, open and frank you've been about the challenges of becoming a Sikh, of the experiences with even Punjabi community and relationships. And I think that's really important that we do let the Sangha to know that not everything is easy in life, in Sikhi, in work, in careers, whatever it is. Nothing's easy. There's challenges in every path. It's our faith that helps us navigate those challenges, our bharosa, our love, our discipline of the Guru that helps us navigate those challenges.
It's about getting a different framework for it as well, isn't it? Like, as in, if you start understanding that it's just my karma that's created this,
you'd be careful.
And I am, like, in an Ayurvedic constitution, I'm a Pitta type, which means I'm quite fiery. I'm also quite impatient. I might have regulated an Ardas to Guru Sahib as in, please just give me all my karma to clear in this lifetime. Well, there's going to be challenges along the way, because, like, really, that's what there's still a lot on that account. It's not, I think some people come into maybe Sikhi or any spiritual path or come after they've been blessed with Amrit, thinking, Guru Sahib is taking care of me now, which means it's going to be cushy. They're reducing your karam to a great extent, but you'll still have to work through some of that. The more Simran you do, the easier that becomes, but the less bhakti you do, the more you're still going to have to work through it. At least you get an understanding. At least Guru Sahib is giving you the tools to get that understanding if you're taking that on. Where you're not terming the challenges maybe as such, you're not seeing it as life taking punches at you. You understand why you're having to go through that.
Yeah.
And there is only one way, and that's through it. And maybe if I up my reciting of Gurbani and my Simran, this is going to be a lot easier. And that too, I'm going to have to learn with, as in through the experiences of it. If I sit there and I'm just in my mind cursing Guru Sahib, as like complaining or why are you doing this to me? Well, I'm going to stay there because I'm not doing anything to change that and take myself out of it.
And one thing we learn from history is that our strength as a community is in our Guru and in our faith and in our Gurbani that we read. That's what gives us the strength to navigate challenges in life. But just, I was just going to say the final question was for me was just, if there's one message or teaching from Sikhi you'd want to share with the world, what would it be?
It's such a difficult one. I think very much the idea of Ik Oankar, the idea of oneness, the idea of do not make the mistake of going to look outside, do not get caught in the veils of illusions, go beyond. Sikhi helps you so greatly with that, but that's ultimately, I think, where, as a kid, even my journey with it, going back to mystic Catholic literature, that's where the desire to find how to do that got planted. Sikhi is such a practical way in its entirety of doing that. But you cannot do the picking and choosing in that sense because it doesn't work in that way. But Sikhi holds we would have a phrase in English, I guess, holds the promise, but that's not what it is. It holds the tools, it holds the key, it holds
the power, the ability, the tool set, everything you need is
to
there.
have you right here, right now, experience Waheguru. What else do you want? And that as a teaching, but also as a very, like, where you say like the teachings in Sikhi, but like the very practical path to walk, to get there in a very non-well-phrased way, it would be that.
I think that's the most beautiful part of it, Benji, to be fair, because it's a frank and open and honest reflection rather than reading of a script or something which you've kind of prepared. Should we do the quick fire round?
I've got one question,
Okay,
and then we go to quickfire. It's kind of, we spoke about earlier about your journey starting from the Vaheguru in that yoga class, but even before that, one thing that you spoke about was the passing of certain members in your family and the idea about death. And you were saying that you didn't get the answers at that time. Now where you are in your life, do you feel like you've got those answers? Hanji.
I think Gurbani holds all of those answers.
Good. Well, that was my final question. Before we go to the quick fire, is the quick fire one, right? Or are we anything else left?
Yeah, so the quick fire round is just to try and understand, like, you know, what you get up to a little bit, Benji.
Too short to my answers, basically.
So we can do the first and it comes into your brain, but you can have time to think. We've got a timer here and we'll be tapping away for every second, Benji. Favorite Kirtani?
Can I have two?
Go off.
This is a hard question for me because for me Kirtan that's my Sikhi is very much
Kirtan,
through Kirtan.
Yeah.
And I don't drive, so I make my husband drive all around the country for many Kirtanis. But two, Bhai Niranjan Singh, that's been from the very, very first moment of coming into Sikhi, and Ustad Sukhwant Singh Ji.
Yeah, nice. Favorite Pracharak or Kathawachik?
Really difficult question because I don't really have one.
Okay. It could be in English, obviously, doesn't it? Yeah. It could be Taddi as well.
You might have
stuff. Taddi in the shower.
My Punjabi isn't good, so for me, kata in Punjabi, unfortunately, is really difficult. But I will have to mention them simply because of I have to. Baba Hari Singh Ji, Randhawe Wale. Yeah.
Can we speak a bit about them? Because I was on my first days. Really.
Let's bring Baba Randa up.
Can you
Baba Hari Singh.
introduce Mahapurush is, and then Benji can carry on with the relationship?
Yeah, Baba Hari Singh Randhawe Wale are a student of a Taksal. They have a link with the Samprada. For me, my humble opinion, I think they're probably one of the biggest Vidvans. Vidvan meaning scholar in our faith at the moment. Very, very well versed, really strong in their head as well. And I don't know where, I mean, I know them okay-ish, and every time I meet them, I always feel like, I said to him once that, my pajangi, कि बाबा जी वो थोड़े कोल पराना है, I'm going to be sending my pajangi to you, innit? Like, so that's the kind of person I look at Baba Hari Singh Randhawe, a very strong, good role model, Vidwan scholar, and a really top geezer, I want to say, but that's not the right way to describe a Sant Mahapurush off the Khalsa Panth. Someone who I so highly respect, a really good person. And Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about your relationship with Baba Hari Singh Randhawe, Wale?
Yeah, that relationship was non-existent till last year. I very much feared them the few times that I met them. Like, really, they put a lot of fear in me. They can have that effect, I think, on people. And through Kamalpreet Singh and his Pradeshi and his family, they said, you need to meet Babaji. And I was like, I was shaking in my boots, literally, and trying to find excuses not to have to meet Babaji.
Migraine?
Oh yeah, I actually got sick. Like, I got really ill when we were supposed to meet them. But, like, my mind was making up all kinds of excuses. I was like, they're gonna see straight through me. I couldn't bring myself to. But a good friend of mine who's very close to Babaji, she said, Babaji's full of love. They're just full of love. And so I had the good karam to get to meet Babaji last summer. And this was, it's really funny coming from an academic background, but really not valuing my own academic background anymore and being in a very different position. I don't know, there was, this was at the same time where things with my own parents got to an absolute climax in badness about the relationship, where they officially fully disowned me, as in I'm completely not their daughter anymore, and they've changed all of the legal paperwork. And Babaji, very simply, they'd taken a liking to both Sher Singh and myself, I think. And they were very matter-of-factly, it's like, it's fine. I'll take you in. But so yeah, a very, very, just a lot of kirpa. But I like to listen to Babaji's katha, even though I do not understand their katha, which they find very, very funny, which they'll also make comments about in
Not sure I understand all of it, to be fair. I'm quite good at Punjabi.
I'm guessing even if I would understand Punjabi, I'd still struggle sometimes, because Babaji's katha is quite, let's say, indeed. But here again, that play of, like, just trust Waheguru, I think, like, that was such an enormous journey this year, as in, when your own parents are absolutely not interested, like, they've never met Singh, for example, they've never even spoken to Singh in nearly 10 years of marriage, but then you have one of the greatest Mahapurush of our era to say, like, don't worry, I'll take you in. Like, Maharaj, nothing is impossible. Like, I've learned to not think that anything can't happen, because everything can happen in this path and on this path. You can't think of it, or Maharaj can make it happen in crazy ways. But for anyone who sees the snippet of that video of Babaji, they're painting the journey that I've taken in a bit too of a short, very inspirational, but that wasn't exactly how the journey went, kind of way. There was a bit more to it.
What sometimes out with a bit of mirchi masala, and you need a little bit of spice in the story, right?
They can have that freedom. They can take that freedom.
Talk about mirch masala. It's your favourite food, Benj. Have you? Yeah, see how I did there? You see that?
That was good.
Have you taken a liking to Desi Punjabi food or?
I have Bindia.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, the things.
Yes. And it's kind of the subject you barely ever get in the Guru Rasad. Like it's barely ever in London.
Oh, wow.
Yes, absolutely my
You know
favorite
what?
food.
This is
My
a-
mother-in-law knows. She will make that time. And the day that we will arrive in India, she will have Bindia ready for me. She knows I will not ask for anything else.
You know, I know this is a funny little story. So we being born over here, we have a lot of non-Punjabi food at home.
So do we.
Yeah, and a lot of non and all sorts of dishes, whatever, right? And once mom goes to paronte khane ya, she went, "Yo paronte." Other than mama nahi khane, and she's like, "Le, tu gida na sahenge, tu paronte nahi khanda." It's almost like to be a sick, you gotta have paronte in your diet. And she's like, "Jay, you know, what kind of single, you know, having roti and so yeah."
Broccoli paronte are a firm second on my list of favorites.
But yeah, I just had to remind myself my sikhi is not defined by how much roti I eat. Things like that, you know. If you could have any superpower, Benji, what would it be?
I wouldn't want a superpower unless it would be to be able to memorize Gurbani. I really struggle with that, and that's if Maharaj could just do that kirpa, that would be that would be the ardas.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
I needed it at that moment. It was a really good piece of advice. I still give it to people. Do not share about the type or amount of bhakti you do and the fall that comes of it. And especially I think in a day and age where social media is so big and everyone is showing themselves in these ways, because it takes it away entirely, it ruins it. And when I heard that piece of advice first, I was like, well, that's very unsolicited and I don't really know what to do with that. I'm so glad I was given that advice.
Because we live in a generation where showing off
Yeah.
is the norm, right?
Yeah.
TikTok, whatever it is, we're on a new house, whatever it is, you know. Most embarrassing public moment?
I have many. Okay, a really embarrassing one was actually during my Amrit Sanchar in Soho Road. I was given a bana to wear, but I was not told that as a Panji, I should be wearing pajama underneath. And I wasn't given any. So there's me in the morning wearing my bana and a kamar kasa and going for my Amrit Sanchar. I had Singhs pick me up, friends of mine in Coventry, to go to Birmingham, and neither of them said anything. Neither of them said anything, and neither did any of the Sevarar or Panch Pyare or anyone. So I went through my entire Amrit Sanchar and the rest of the day not wearing pajama. And I started clocking on in the actual Amrit Sanchar. Oh, my Guru. Luckily, it was a long bana and like sitting cross-legged, I could cover my knees and everything. No one said anything. And it's a moment that I still lie awake about at night, thinking like, yeah, that wasn't really my Guru. Did my own bestie there.
Is that where you were given the name Japjit as well?
No, I was given a different name there.
Okay.
I've collected a few names because I've gone a few times for Peish, and I've collected a few names. Japjit was given in the, do you know that 3HO Sikhs, like they take a spiritual name? It was given at that point and it's just stuck.
Okay. So that's what's
But
been...
that wasn't what was given then. I wasn't given a new name during the Amrit Sanchar, the first one actually. I was given a new name when I first went to the Huzur Sahib and went for Peish there. Yeah.
What was that name then?
Rajbir.
Okay. I thought so. I was going to say the Raj.
That's-
but
yeah. But Japjit is stuck and everyone is still saying that. I was like, okay. I mean, it's not bad advice to hear when someone speaks to you. It's like, okay, yeah, keep jotting down. So, it's not the name that Guru Sahib gave me.
It's Desi enough in that sense. At least it's got Punjabi. It's not, Charlotte or something. So, no offense, this is Charlotte caught out there or something. If you could meet anyone, dead or alive, who would you meet?
I don't want to answer that question because I don't want that to influence, like that to be heard as an itcha and to influence any of my karam.
Okay.
just for that reason.
So we'll skip that. You could tell us.
I don't want to come back just for that, for example, as in I do not want that to play any role.
You're trying to keep people coming back then.
Well, since the camera's off, then you can tell us because I'm intrigued. Yeah, that'd be good.
But just on that question, actually, I thought it would be nice before we get to the tradition that we have to finish off with. If we could speak a little about Bhai Jugraj Singh Ji, only because I remember once with Sikh PA, there's quite a big article that came out quite many years ago that Nirapo, Niraver. I don't know if you remember that, and you were featured on an article as well.
Oh, could be.
Do you remember that or not?
What was the article about? Do you know?
There's something happened in Belgium. Maybe
Yes, and yeah, that's how the BBC recently got in touch with me as well. They found that article.
What happened there? Because that was quite a big thing.
Um,
And if you could speak a little about Bhai Jugraj Singh Ji, please.
This was so what happened at that point. This is a good number of years ago. Don't ask me what year it was, but there was a bombing in metro station, train stations in Belgium, I think, from Muslim terrorists. And of course, because in Belgium, Sikhs aren't seen as Sikhs, we are the first to be in the line of fire. And in Brussels, where the bombings happened, there is a considerable Sangat and a Gurdwara Sahib. So Jugraj Singh at that point immediately contacted me and said, Benji, we need to put a message out to make it clear, to not be mistaken for Muslims, and to at the same time make it clear that anyone who has been called, because everything closed down, of course, like all metro stations, train stations, everything closed down, everybody was stuck. And so the Gurdwara Sahib immediately opened like its doors widely, langar. They were giving out langar to people who were stuck in traffic. So to kind of get that message out. And we got a video out and we got an article out, I think. But so it was tied in with that. And apparently that's still somewhere on the internet because a BBC program recently found me that way. I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah. It was quite viral to me, if I remember.
Yeah, and we did it, I think, in Dutch. As in, the article was probably in English, but we did a video in Dutch, potentially in French. I can't even remember. We must have, because Brussels is mainly French speaking. Just in a way, as in keeping Sangat safe and making it clear for people, as in an opportunity for people to actually learn about Sikhs and about that. Okay, here, doors are open, come and have langar.
Looking forward to the BBC documentary thing that they're talking. I think that's quite. Are they looking to make? Is it a documentary? BBC?
Yeah, so BBC Heart and Soul. There's a radio program. They're currently making a documentary about Sikhi in Belgium. Yeah,
That'll be quite interesting to see and hear. And please do share that with us.
Yeah.
And what about your experience with Bhai Jugraj Singh Ji for the last point before we finish?
Yeah. So I got to get to know Bhai Jugraj Singh before all of his kata started off. Before he even started Basics Sikhi. We went to like a couple of weekends with Sangat together. I was living in Belgium and in America at that time. I think it was, I know that he would look out for people coming new into Sikhi. I think I immediately had that experience in that sense. He would be different from a lot of others, where it's just like almost blinded by the white face, right? Which is very uncomfortable, by the way. And I find it harder here in Southall, for example, than in Leicester. People have seen me there, but like immediately there's a certain gaze that you get, or like people will look at you just differently.
This is
which is very unpleasant.
People in Southall stare.
Yeah, true. And
like,
bit off topic, but very funny. I remember when I still lived in Belgium and I was here visiting a friend in Southall and going Gurdwara Sahib. I was in one of the big supermarkets. She spoke Punjabi, I didn't. And she starts laughing so much. And it's like, why are you laughing? It's like the people behind us are wondering if you have a skin condition or whether you're actually a white person. So yeah, you do attract attention. It was different with him. He didn't make that distinction. And that stood out in a big way for me initially, because most people did make a distinction, be that in a positive or in a negative way. Often it was way too positive. It's like, please just treat me like you would treat any Sikh, any Punjabi Sikh. Don't put me on a pedestal. Don't want to be there. None of us want to be there. Or it would be like from the opposite side. For him, it really didn't seem to matter. And that was extremely refreshing. That was extremely refreshing. the fact that he got to meet Singh before I got to meet Singh was just a beautiful play of Waheguru in that sense, because he was very protective. He'd seen situations where it hadn't turned out very well, where people would get married just to come to the country, for example. And it wouldn't have made any difference for me had he not met Singh. We were engaged, we were going to get married. But it was wonderful that Waheguru in that way just put his mind at ease, because he was just like, that like big brother, you have no one here, let me just watch out for you. That's the big, that's what the personal experience so much hinges on, that brotherly protection, but also I'm not going to treat you any different simply because you're white. That doesn't play into the matter here, which was extremely refreshing, to be honest. And I think that's becoming hopefully more of a common attitude as there are more people from different backgrounds, various different backgrounds coming into Sikhi, but we still have a long way to go with it. I don't like to be reminded that I'm white. I've said to Kamalpreet Singh, I've said this for 15 years, as in I'm a reverse coconut, as in I don't see myself as white, but it's very annoying to constantly be reminded that I am.
So any advice for Punjabi community, Punjabi, next generation of Punjabis in the world, or Malaysian Punjabis, British Punjabis, and where people from Belgium or Malaysia, natives in that land are becoming sick? Any advice to us on how we should be not dealing with that, but supporting, but without putting up these barriers or creating pedestals?
Definitely not put up the pedestal. Ask the same things that you would ask of any. Try and see beyond. I know that you can't. As in, none of it. We can say that we see beyond color. That we say that we don't see color. That's not a true thing. That's just another made up thing, right? But not let it play in. Not let it play a part. If it reminds you of how great Guru Sahib is, fantastic. As in that there are no limits to Guru Sahib's powers of how they pull someone towards them. But that should be the only difference, potentially. And I think really importantly, come with the same sense of amazement than to any Punjabi person and ask them about their journey into Sikhi. Even if they come from a good Sikh family, still they're walking their own journeys. I have often felt that when the attention kind of goes to me, I know so many Sikhs, both Singhs and Singhmia, whose journeys are much more worthwhile telling about. But why is it always that I am being asked about it? And why are they not getting the same
attention?
Yeah.
Give us the details, we'll get them on.
When we were in India just recently, it happened 3 times. And I understand why they do that. That Baba Hari Singh Ji would start after a kata where we were at, would start talking about me all of a sudden, and then telling the Sangat and giving me sarope. Why would I get a saropa for coming into Sikhi when it's all Maharaj's work simply because I'm white? As in, that saropa doesn't belong to me. That's just the praise of Waheguru to be sung. That has nothing to do with me. Like, then give a saropa to anyone who's ever taken Amrit. And I've asked them to please stop doing this, because yes, I understand that the situation, especially in Punjab, is dreadful at this point, and that it's just a way of showing the greatness of Guru Sahib. Exactly, of motivating people. It's like, what are you letting go of if other people would walk away from everything they have because they deem it nothing compared to Guru Sahib? And that's indeed what happened. Like, nothing I had was worth anything compared to having Guru Sahib. But that's the same for a Punjabi person who's built that connection with Guru Sahib, right? So I feel extremely uncomfortable getting a saropa just for ultimately being white. Or like for the things I've done, well, Maharaj has been doing all of those things. I've literally done nothing of that. So I think there's work in that sense to be done. And I understand that it can be very uplifting and very inspiring, but we're overlooking those who have been living maybe in Red for so much longer and in so many better ways than I am doing or have been doing for any days of my life. And they're just entirely glanced over because my analysis a little bit, within that's the academic in me, still very much a colonial attitude to things.
Absolutely.
Very much a leftover colonial attitude, as in if the white person is doing it, surely it must mean something, like it means more somehow.
it's
and
literally
we need to get so
that.
far away from that. We need to get so far away from that.
And the last thing is we're going to try something, which is we want you to leave one word for the next guest to share their thoughts on. It may fail, I'm putting this out there, just one word, and then the next guest will be asked to expand on that word or what their thoughts are. Anything you want.
Kirpa.
Okay, well, remember that.
Like,
Kirpa. I was going to define it, but I thought, no, I'm going to let somebody else define what Kirpa is as well.
well, thank you so much. Thank you to Benji, Javdeep Benji for coming on, or Rajbeet Benji for coming on this podcast today and starting off this new series, Finding Sikhi. Also, thank you so much to Faisal as well for bringing about this idea. If you guys, the Sangat, have enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comments in the comment section. If you've got any questions for Benji, then leave them in the comment section, and we'll make sure Benji looks at the comment section and answers those. Maybe in the future we could do another podcast in the future if there's any questions. And if you feel like yourself or somebody that you know has a story that you would like to share with the rest of the world, then please contact us as well. We'll leave the email address and the details in the description, and we'll leave in the comment section, or maybe put on the screen as well, so you can contact us directly if you want to share your story as well, or you know of somebody who has a great story. Again, like Bryce, I've just said at the start of the podcast, this is to to inspire us and just learn about these great stories, because I feel like in this podcast the key theme that I took away was that the Guru has found us, found me, found you, and that was so beautiful as well. So again, thank you so much, Benji, for coming on from driving all the way down to lovely London from Nesta, and to Paisab for doing the driving, of course, and to Paisab Parampur Singh Ji for being a part of the podcast. And please, in the future, please continue to host. And we've made this joke many times offline, but we've got to get you on the podcast as well, on the other side, not on this side, so we can grill you with some good questions as well. So thank you so much, and we'll finish off there. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.